Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Y'all ready for this?
So it's, Ken went back to the Ducks in 2010, and that was by design. I was an unrestricted free agent that summer and told my agent to get me a job with the Ducks or the Kings. I didn't care who. I was on borrowed time. I think I was 35 years old at that point in time, and ended up signing a 2-year deal with the Ducks and got traded to Edmonton partway through that deal. But that was a blessing in disguise too, to get to go up there and again, more adversity, but to get to go up there and play with all those great young talents and, first overall picks galore, and be in a city where, hockey reigns supreme is pretty awesome, especially to close it out like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely shared your struggle of being a bigger guy. And I mean, you did it at the NHL level. I did it in major Pee Wee and house league, but
yeah, we're basically the same player.
Pretty much.
Yeah. That's the thing. So,
but you were saying when he came up, he was like 6'6", 245. That sounded like me in 6th or 7th grade.
Were you always that big, or did you hit your growth spurt in college, or did you go into college hockey being that big guy?
Well, when I went into college, I was the same height, but I was I remember I weighed in at 204 pounds my freshman year.
So freshman 15 hit you.
No, I put on 30 pounds that year, and I credit that honestly. We had a strength coach there, Tim Wakefield, and he was absolutely instrumental to my total development. Really taught me how to train. His emphasis was on, because he had a lot of players to train, so he taught us how to train to failure. So we lifted to failure, which really allows you, I think, especially at that age, at 19 years old, to really build muscle. And I worked my ass off. So I really got myself up to speed, and I think it took me a couple of 3 years to figure out how to move my body after that. And I got a scholarship.
I'm still dealing with that, Andy.
Yeah. I know. Well, I got a scholarship as a forward too, and so I transitioned back to defense partway through my second season at school. So it was. That transition was challenging, as you can probably imagine, especially on Olympic ice surface. So I think, again, being a big guy and doing that, and then having to chase Jason Blake around, for 4 years at school, every time we played North Dakota, and there were a million great players. Matt Cullen was at St. Cloud, and there's just so many great players that I got to play against in the WCHA there that really helped me become the player that I ended up being in the end.
For sure. So the difference between, just wrapping it up, your freshman 15 was muscle thanks to a conditioning coach.
Yeah.
Mine was just thanks to the meal plan at Algonquin.
Yeah.
The chicken
fingers.
Yeah. Well, they say the camera puts on 15 pounds. So I mean,
exactly. I guess
the question, Joel, is how many cameras are on you? That's the question.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very true.
So when you also too, you started, I think it was 2 years. Well, you played 2 years in San Jose, and then you were part of the Minnesota, I don't know if the expansion draft, would that be correct?
Yeah, that's right.
How was that feeling, getting picked? I'm assuming picked or traded. I'm not sure how it worked back then. It was a big thing then, right? Not never really.
Yeah, that was one of the first expansion teams of this new era.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Were you happy about that? Did that kind of upset you a bit? You liked playing in San Jose?
Yeah, looking back, it was another big step, because at that time I had a chip on my shoulder, and I burned some bridges in San Jose. Just to be honest with you guys, I had an altercation with Dean Lombardi there in playoffs the second season. I wasn't happy. I think I only played 30 games or something like that my second year, and I didn't play in the minors. So I mean that was 50 bag skates, just to put it in frame of reference, and then more in the playoffs. So by the time by the time playoffs were, I was frothing at the mouth and losing my mind, and I was young and dumb and thought I knew more than I did, and so I said some things I shouldn't have said, and I mean, they could have buried me, but thankfully they exposed me, and thankfully the Wild saw opportunity in me, and then to get to go there and play under Jacques Lemaire. I mean, what an opportunity. I mean, and again, I was young and extracted what I could from it, but they tried to turn me back into a forward while I was there, a la Brent Burns, and they did the same thing with Brent, and I mean, that wasn't going to be the path forward for me. I didn't think so. I mean, I went to Mike Ramsey, our defense coach, after I hadn't played for a good while, and they put me in a game in Detroit. And I played defense, and I thought I played well. And I went to Rammer at the end of the game. I was like, Rammer, I just think I'm meant to be a defenseman in this league. I just really do. And he looked at me, he goes, you'll never be a defenseman in this league. And then, keep this in mind, this is my 4th year in, right? So yeah. I was like, well, that's not going to fly. So, I just had a gut feeling, and I trusted my gut, and I went into Doug Risebrough, a few days after, when we got back home off the road, and I went into his office, I mean, at 24 years old or whatever I was, and said, Doug, I just really believe I'm meant to be a defenseman. I think it's my only chance to have a long and sustainable career. And if there's anywhere that you think that anybody would want to take me, to give me that opportunity, I would greatly appreciate it. And he traded me 7 days later to Atlanta, and that was really where it all started to happen for me. Early on, we had Kurt Fraser there, and that wasn't going to do it. And then when Bob Hartley came in, Bob came and he did interviews with everybody when he took position as head coach. And when he called me in, he's like, Suts, I hear you you have great potential. He's like, we haven't seen it yet. Tabarnak. He's like, he was such a funny guy. He goes, well, he said, we're going to find out. He said, I'm going to play you 30 minutes a night, and we're going to find out you're going to slit your own throat. So I was like, okay, I guess that's how it's going to go. And he did. He stuck to his guns. He played the shit out of me. And thankfully it was sink or swim. And at that time I was able to thrive under that type of opportunity. It's a nice thing knowing that you're going to get to go out the next shift and play against Alexander Ovechkin, and your job is to shut him down. And they're going to score because they're the best players in the world. But like, hopefully you can have that be a positive thing over the end of the season, where you're generating more than you're giving up, right? So that became the thing, and I had some good defense partners there, and mainly Nick Havlid. He and I were a great partner there, and I was playing 30 minutes a night there, and had an instrumental role in the team. That's really where I think everything sort of took shape for me.
I mean, that's awesome. So like you said, like when you came to Atlanta, who was coaching? You said Fraser was coaching?
Yeah, Kurt Fraser.
Yeah. And then
I love Kurt, but his I think his mantra was like, he thought if you outworked the other team and beat them up, you'd win most games. And that's not the case in the NHL. I mean, you just have to have so much more going on. And we couldn't even get out of our own end, for the first 3 years I was in Atlanta, to be honest with you. Like, we couldn't break out of our own end. It was a Chinese fire drill. I mean, it was brutal. So, the organization did a great job rebuilding. And, by the time my last year was there, I mean, we obviously had Heatley, Kovalchuk, we had, Marian Hossa, Slava Kozlov. I mean, Bobby Holik, Scott Mellenby, Sean McEachran. I mean, we had a hell of a team. Greg DeVries. I mean, we had Kari Lehtinen as a young goalie. We had an incredible team at the end, and we won our division that year and got trounced by the Rangers in the first round of the playoffs. But it was the first time the franchise had ever made the playoffs, and it was incredible to be part of that journey. And Don Waddell was the GM there, and he's obviously in Carolina now. And Don took great care of me. He believed in me a lot, and he's a huge reason why I was able to succeed, for sure. He had a lot of belief in me and gave me a lot of opportunity there in Atlanta.
So I know when we were looking up earlier, like you had 3 coaches in 1 year at one point with the Flyers.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's unheard of. Like, the Canucks right now are kind of in a coaching kerfuffle, but 3 coaches in 1 year, that's
And Don Weddle being one of them. So obviously the GM took over for a bit. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, Donnie came in interim there. I think as he was trying to find a replacement, and I actually think we had a pretty positive record under Don. I think everybody was ready to move forward in a new direction, and then he did a great job finding Bob. Like Bob, for those people that don't know him, he's one of the most detail oriented coaches you'll ever have, and he's intense. He's as intense a coach as you could ever have, and I think for a young team. And at that time he was the perfect guy to come in because he brought in a structure that was pivotal. I mean, it was pivotal for Heater and Covey to have a structure, for Kari Littinen to have a structure, to have someone that was gonna have everything planned out, have structured video, have practice. He'd put the practices up on the board before you'd go up for practice. He had everything down to the minute, every drill. And you knew what you were getting into. And he, sometimes he'd get Sunday off after a Saturday game, but I'll tell you what, Monday morning practice was no joke. It was every time you knew exactly what you were going to get on Monday morning. You were going to get your ass kicked. And so if you were going to go out and have some pops on Saturday night, you knew Sunday you better sleep and recover and get yourself ready to go, because Monday morning was back to work.
Like you mentioned playing with Hossa and Kovalchuk and Heatley. Like, of those three, which one would you say had the most raw talent?
Oh man, that's a really challenging one. There's an upper echelon of players there. I wouldn't put myself in that category. I had moments of greatness, I would say, but there are guys, and on every single team I played on, there were guys, right? And if I look at it going all the way back, you look at like from San Jose, you look at Owen Nolan as an example, or we had Mike Vernon there. There were so many we had there. We had Bernie Nichols there when I started. And you go into Minnesota, and I played with Marian Gaborik in his first 2 years in the league. Talk about another just phenom in the making, right? And then you go to Atlanta, and Heatley, Kovalchuk, Hossa, Slava Kozlov. I'd put him up there. These guys are all just out of this world. But Ilya Kovalchuk, it was ridiculous. Like, he just raw, pure, like very Ovechkin-esque, like so powerful and big and strong, and could shoot the lights out, and moves and could hurt you so many ways. Heater was such a dynamic all-around player, and great leader, especially before the accident. And then Haas was probably the best all-around player I ever played with. He just had, he had veins in his calves, like they looked like a bodybuilder's from. He was a freak of nature, and he'd strip guys from behind with one hand on his stick. Like he could lift you off the puck with one hand on his stick, and before you could turn around, he'd be gone the other way. He was just so talented, and then from Atlanta, go up to Long Island, and got to play with Rick DiPietro. It was sad the way that ended with him, but he was such a phenomenal talent, and we had others there, and then going into Ottawa, which was one of my favorite experiences of all time, was being D partners while I was there with Erik Karlsson was one of the highlights of my career, and Jason Spezza and Daniel Alfredsson, again, like probably the best two-way player that I ever played with or against, and just intense to no end. And Mike Fisher was there, and just an incredible crew. And then I almost re-signed with Ottawa for 2 years, and it was right at the end of the year they offered me a deal, and I decided I think I'd earned the right to be an unrestricted free agent, so I waited till the summer, and I ended up going to Anaheim, as I mentioned, but then to get to go there and play with Perry and Getzlaff and Koivu and Teemu.
You know what though? You're mentioning all these names, and I'm sure if I talk to them, they'd be like, I got to play with fucking Andy Sutton.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. They're like I'm saying, those are a special breed of player, and then up in Edmonton, when I got there, it was Taylor Hall and Ryan Nugent Hopkins and Jordan Eberle and who else do we have? Sam Gagne. And there were so many first rounders up there, and just phenomenal. Devin Dubnyk. There were so many just great talents up there. Even Nikolai Habibulin, like I would put him in that upper class. I tell people the story all the time. He at the end of practice, and I could always shoot it over 100, and he'd line up like 50 pucks at the top of the circle, at the top of the circles right in the center of the ice. And he'd say, shoot it at my head as hard as you can. Right. So I'd shoot it at his head as hard as I could. And what he was doing was he'd just sit there and he'd go like this, and he was training his eyes to slow the puck down. Like that's all he was doing was trying, like he'd make his eyes crazy, and he's like trying to track the puck and like slow it down with his eyes. And he was just absolutely incredible.
At that point, he was in like his late 30s, right?
Yeah,
at that point, Edmonton, like
2% body. He was an absolute a freak of nature. Like just an absolute specimen, and like had a level of compete that was just insane. And he was just such a tremendous athlete. Like we'd play ping pong after practice. He'd one of the best ping pong guys, and he's just a
fun fact. Put that on the back of a hockey card.
Well, there's one thing that people don't know about Daniel Alfredsson. So we'd play ping pong everywhere. I love ping pong, but they always had an annual ping pong tournament in Ottawa, and they'd pit Alfie 1 and Alfie 2 would be in the bracket, and the only distinction is one would be right-handed and left-handed, and oftentimes they'd play each other in the final.
Wow, so that's crazy.
That's wicked.
And he's a scratch golfer. He's another one that's just a freak of nature. And we play that keep away game, be like 1-on-1 or 1-on-1 inside one of the face-off circles. And I mean, I was a good defender. I mean, you couldn't get the puck off of him. Like he's so quick, and his body positioning and his puck protection and just the moves that he had, and the strength of the puck, and the smarts, the know-how to know where to be. I mean, he was just another level of athlete.
That's crazy. All those names you said, like that's to me that I'll just hearing all those names. Those are guys we grew up watching, and like like I said, I remember seeing your name. Like I think probably the first time I would have seen your name would have been probably Atlanta, because that's when I was of the age where I actually could watch TV and remember it. But like naming all those guys, like what was the one time where you saw one of them score and you just said that's probably the craziest thing I've ever seen?
Oh man, that's
I'm assuming you've seen a lot of them, because like the names like that,
Yeah, I mean, I was, there were a lot of cool games. I was in a game in Edmonton when Sam Gagne had 10 points. I mean, I played in that game.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was ridiculous.
That was like a whole 15-minute TSN reel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the most ridiculous. And Sam's like he's one of my all-time favorite guys I ever played with. So like to watch him do that night was so cool. I saw Kobe score 1 million goals. I mean, I played against Ovechkin and watched him score so many. And I remember I tell this story a lot. I was in San Jose starting my career. I think I was in my second season, and we were in Dallas. And I think we were down a goal, or maybe it was tied. I can't even remember exactly what it was, but there was a face-off in the Dallas offensive zone, in our D zone, and I was on the bench, of course, because it was like at the end of the game, and Madonna won the draw back to Sergei Zubov, and he walked the line, and Brett Hull had popped out, and Zubov threw a saucer over, but it didn't sit flat. It hit the ice and it bounced up like 6, 8, 10 inches, whatever it was. And Hully batted it out of the air, top shelf on Mike Vernon. And I remember thinking at that time, I was watching from the bench. I was like, holy shit, like button up, Buttercup. You're in the big leagues now. Like you better get your shit together if you want to stick around here. So, you were constantly reminded just how good guys were. And that made you want to be better, and getting to practice against those guys and watch them perform, watch how they prepare. It's all the stuff back then that helped you become a veteran. I think now that they give it away pretty early, but that's another story.
Yeah, I mean, I Adam talked about watching you play in Atlanta and remembering that. But I think my first taste of Andy Sutton was when we had season tickets to the Sens, and you were in Ottawa. And I remember just loving, like, every time you're on the ice was big hit. Yeah. And I mean, I remember watching the playoff run. You guys played Pittsburgh, and you hit Jordan Leopold. I personally think your elbow was down.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I watched it again.
But you must be an expert then.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's
two refs didn't call it.
Two refs didn't call it.
Your arm was down, and a linesman didn't call it. If it would have been that bad of a hit, a linesman could have said something, and no one said anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's the game was different back then, and I say this often now. I've got a family, and my body hurts like hell, and I think about Jordan or other guys I knocked out, and it's I I don't know. I don't know if it's better. I don't know if the game's better with that in it or not. Like, I think good hard body checking is great. I'm not sure that like devastating another human like that is necessarily something that makes the game better. It's definitely going to be inherent with the sport just because of how fast it is and the players are so strong and stuff. But I think that I hit the hurt back then. I grew up watching Brian Marchment was the first guy I got to watch when I came to the Sharks, and I wanted to be like Mush. He had such a poise and such command on the ice, and people knew when he was out there, and I always carried that with me. I was like, I want to carry that as a player. Like, I want to make sure that opponents know when I'm on the ice. And I tried, I really, that season in Ottawa, I did the same thing in Long Island all year, and going into Ottawa, I just kind of carried on with what I'd done earlier that season. And it was one of the only seasons I really had a semi full season, as I mentioned, all the injuries. So it seemed like I'd get this momentum, and I was always in these positions where, I'd be tops in the league in a lot of different statistics, especially defensive statistics. And something would happen. I'd blow an ankle, or, dislocate a shoulder or something. And it's like, it's you live by the sword, you die by the sword too, and I always played on that edge. And when you play on the edge, you open yourself up for injury too.
I love that, though. That's a great saying. That's good. I like that.
Is there an injury that you found tougher than another to come back from?
Yeah, there were many, but the toughest one was actually in Atlanta. Actually, my last year in Atlanta, I was unfortunate, and again, I think it was 25 or 30 games in the end of the year. I was leading the league in hits and block shots, and I was in the top 5 or 10 in ice time, and I was, perfect setup going into free agency, and I shattered the left ankle, and when I shattered it, I dislocated the peroneal tendon, which is the longest tendon in your body. It runs basically from down your outside of your thigh, and where it connects at your knee, and then the peroneal tendon starts. It goes all the way down behind your ankle bone, under your foot, and connects under your big toe. And it dislocated. It shot on the other side of my ankle bone, and they tacked it back, dug a trench for it. They tacked it back. They put the sheath back down and put a bunch of anchors in it. And I still can't roll my ankle out this way. But when I tried to come back and skate, I tried to come back and play in the playoffs that year, and I could hardly move. I mean, it was a bad idea. I came back and did not look great, and it ended up costing me a lot of opportunity, I would say, in retrospect. So that was a really challenging one. I didn't feel quite right for well over a year.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I broke my foot playing high school football, so that was pretty major. But I don't think it was as bad as coming back to the playoffs.
I remember that because I said, "Laddie, I'm right behind you. Let me take the hit." And
that didn't work out well. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I was in an air cast as much as I was in a dress shoe. I think most of my career I don't even know how many foot fractures I had, and I played with them like oftentimes I played with them. So I don't miss that type of constant pain and suffering, I can assure you.
So, I mean, I think that's a great segue into the business that you have now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you went out and you're making this great equipment now. Do you want to kind of tell us about what you've been working on since you retired?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on a lot of things. I was one that I started trying to develop some things while I was still playing. So I started, back to my education and engineering, I started developing some intellectual property in the protective space, particularly equipment components, and then started trying to actively license those components to some of the leading manufacturers. And that led me, long story long, I had that way downstream with Easton before they got acquired by Bauer, and the project got squashed. And then I ended up going and working for a multi-brand hockey company where I was acting president there for over 4 years. I provided some investment opportunity into that business, and right around the time COVID started, I left that business, and part of my exit was I took the Verbero brand with me. So Verbero has been around since 2008. It paid into the NHL for 3 seasons, representing players like Cam Atkinson and others. Had some good products, had some decent branding, definitely had pitfalls and needed work. And so I really wanted to launch that as a standalone and do some things that I really felt like the industry needed. namely accessibility and giving top tier product at a fair price. Because I think the price gouging has gotten completely out of hand, to be frank. And then the accessibility has gotten out of hand, and then retail's dying. So I wanted to sell it direct. So I wanted to work direct. And I really wanted to put a focus on custom, everything custom. I wanted to do everything custom and give teams the ability to deck themselves out head to toe, on ice, off ice, bags, all the apparel, headwear, outerwear, custom gloves. We do it all, and we do it better than most. And then we developed a bunch of proprietary software that allows us to host those products in dedicated team store environments online. And we can really host just about anything in that environment. So we've really been able to grow quickly in that regard. And then we really obliterated the rep force structure for the industry, quite frankly. Most of the other manufacturers have territorial reps. So to put it in perspective, I think pre-COVID Bauer had 50 worldwide. We just crossed the 500 sales rep threshold. So we work with guys like yourselves, guys that are integrated in the hockey community. We work with many different podcast guys. So like, if this is something you guys are interested in taking a look at, it's on the table, and you guys can reach out to me offline on this. But we represent groups like Elite Prospects, leading tournament companies like Weekend Hockey, Super Series down here in the South. We work with a lot of different clinics and academies. We're working a lot with a lot of different league deals, and then we work with a lot of top associations and collegiate associations as well. So we've really pushed into that custom space big time. I'd say our product selection, product mix allow us to be truly one of a kind, because as much as we sell all the apparel and the custom items, we also have the lightest stick on the market at 350 grams, short of the new Bauer stick that's popping like a twig for everybody. We have the only full carbon fiber skate. It's the only full carbon fiber skate on the market, and we're less than half the price of the True Skate. We've got an amazing glove, our Mercury glove and our Mercury pant, and we're a best-in-class product company. So we have a best-in-class product for every category, and we're not trying to stuff a new design down the throats of the consumer just to try to get them to buy something different, or to try to make the retailer buy a whole new line of products. We're gonna keep continuity in our line so people can know what to expect. They know where they can go get the same product, and we're not going to replace it unless we can find a better product to replace it with. So I would say that's sort of who we are in a nutshell. We've grown a lot in the U.S. Since I took over the brand, and I think Canada's about a year or so behind the U.S. with regards to coming back from COVID. I really think it's still at least a year behind. So I'm hopeful, and we have duplicate inventory in Canada, and we're still pushing hard to gain access up there, and it's working. I mean, it's growing at about the same cadence as the US, but about a year behind. So I think the Canadian consumer will start to see us more and more up there, and I look forward to that opportunity.
I know I checked out your website whenever we first started talking a few weeks back, and like you said, the fact that it's almost like a one-stop shop, like whenever I was running like even our like men's league teams, and you can get this from this site and that from that site, and you're like, you guys, everything is on one site. And like you said, it's almost like once you create your account, it's you almost have like your own team store. And it was super cool because I've never seen anything like this. And I've been running sports teams since I've been in high school. And just super convenient. And like you said, like the stuff that you have on the market is you're getting the quality. It's not like you're sacrificing quality for for a specific price point. And to me, the only advertisement you need is the fact that you have a rugged NHL defenseman who's put up with the toughest of tough, is saying this is the equipment that you want, this is good, this is the top level stuff. Like, that's all I would need to hear to sell that to me.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, guys, and that's the message, in the end. And I sing it loud every day, and it's the truth of the matter. I'm not in this to mess around. I'm also not in it to sell inferior product. I want it to embody where I've been and everything I've done, but I want it to be available for every man. I think that's an important distinction. I don't want to alienate us from anybody. I want to make it accessible, and I also want people to understand that like a skate's a perfect perfect example. The difference between a $1,200 skate and a $200 skate at retail is about $50 at the manufacturer level. So why the hell should the customer pay $1,000 for something that costs the manufacturer $50? I mean, you guys tell me. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
There's no reason other than greed, and I think it speaks volumes again of who you are as a person, that means so much to you, because you could easily say, okay, they're charging $1,200, I'll charge $900, and you would still sell because it's $300 less.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're not doing that, and I think that speaks volumes to you as a person and as a company.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's it. And in the end, I say it all the time, and I'm on calls with teams or associations or potential sales reps every day. Like, we want to earn it. I don't want anything to be given. It was never given to me as a player, and I don't want it given to us as a brand. But I can assure you, if people give us a shot, they're gonna like what they see. We've perfected the customer service side of things. We have tracking software that allows us to communicate with the customers and our sales reps throughout the order process. So it's essentially like the DoorDash or Uber Eats of custom items. That doesn't exist. Nobody has that. Nobody in any marketplace has that. So we've created that. It's a custom system. So again, back to visibility. Like, we want to be able to communicate to people what's happening with their products and their orders and when they can expect them. And we build all kinds of automations around that to make sure we hit the mark and hit the deliverables. So it's a different experience. It's custom reinvented for sure. I mean, we're doing it differently than it's ever been done before, and it's definitely translating.
Well, I've been looking for a new pair of gloves for like 5 years because I have no palms left in my hands, and my hands hurt after I play hockey. So I think we're gonna have to check out some stuff, and maybe have to convince my wife to let me buy a new pair of gloves.
Well, you know what? If you customize it with our Average Jocks logo, I'm sure we could convince Alex that it's a for the podcast. It's to grow the podcast.
It's a write-off.
Yeah.
You should just you should just be a man and go get yourself a pair of fucking hockey gloves.
I think, you know what? I'm going to act tough in the podcast because she's not here. But when she watches this, I'm not going to be tough. But yeah, fuck it. I'm going to do it.
You know what? And she's in charge of all our marketing. So this will probably get edited.
Yeah, she's going to cut us out. She shouldn't, but she might.
So I guess before we move on to current NHL stuff, this is a question I try and ask any former player that's come on. And since you played forward and defense. So I'll ask both. If you're playing forward, Andy, you can pick any two players you were playing on the wing, right? So pick another winger and your center for your ideal forward line.
Like all time?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be somebody you played with.
Yeah, I'd probably, honestly, that's a really tough one. I played with a million players, but if I could play with Daniel Alfredsson and Mike Fisher, I'd be pretty happy. I think it'd be a pretty solid line, pretty tough to play against.
And that'd be a pretty good. Yeah, that'd be a pretty good looking line, to be honest.
Put you in front of the net and let Alfredsson and Fisher do it all.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. Not many defensemen could move you if you were standing in front of the net.
And some nice smiles on that line.
Yeah.
Fisher's a model. I mean, this guy's got the pearly whites. Yeah, Alfredsson with the big red hair.
Yeah.
Rusty the Clown. On D, honestly, like it was always an adventure playing with Carl. But he was so young and adventurous out there, and it was pretty cool. But I think if I had to pick one defenseman to play with, God, I'm gonna have to think about this for a minute. It's a great one. I don't know. The way things have gone with Eric, I'd say probably Erik Karlsson. To be honest with you, the player that he's turned into is pretty spectacular to watch. I mean, it's and especially for a stay at home style guy like me who could probably give him a little bit more room out there. I think we would have made a good long term push if we'd been a little closer together in age.
Yeah, and so the last part of this question is a goalie that you would love to play in front of.
Well, Hobby Bullen was pretty incredible. I think obviously Marc-Andre Fleury would be up there. I think he's shown time and again his skill set is timeless. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And you gotta throw it back. The Grant Fuhrs and the Patrick Waghs of the world, and those types of guys. There's been some pretty great ones over the years.
So Adam, unless you have anything to add about the past part of this.
Yeah, maybe just one more question. Like, obviously, you were, like you said, you had to try to transition to that tough guy, big hit. Was there like one fight that you remember that you like once you dropped the gloves, you were like, oh fuck, like this dude's a lot
Yeah.
stronger or bigger than I thought he was.
Yeah, there's a couple, but one in particular, I remember I nailed Ryan Callahan. We had that horrible rivalry with the between the Islanders and the Rangers, and they had Colton Orr at that time, and I just remember I turned up the ice and he'd already had his gloves off and turned at me, and like before I could even really get a grab, like they were coming, they were firing like literally every half a second off my side of my helmet, and they were ching 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 like one after the next, and they were heavy, like just smashing my helmet, and I wouldn't even look up, like and I don't know what his hand looked like after hamburger meat, but I wasn't about to look up and find out where his head was, to try to throw much of a punch. So I think I just went, took him down like this, and that was the end of the fight. We each got 5 for fighting, but I don't think I threw a punch. So as he was definitely up there. I fought Ty Domi in Toronto. It was a pretty cool thing. Wade Belak, and rest in peace. And there were a lot of guys. I had a bunch of battles with Scott Parker back in the day when he had that big ass beard hanging down. He was scary as hell. And there were some good battles over the years for sure.
I mean, not to throw Domi into the bus for being small, but like, were you punching down when you fought Domi, or like?
Oh, you guys can't even imagine how good he was. He was so strong and powerful, and his center of gravity and his skill set, and how he could get you spinning in a direction you weren't used to going in because he was a lefty. And I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing. You could punch him in the face 50 times and nothing would happen. So there was really no winning that fight. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd hate to get that guy a dress shirt with how thick that fucking neck is.
There's no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, he was maybe one of the best ever at what he did for a living. There's no doubt about it.
And being a lefty too, that was Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to some of the current stuff and just kind of pick your brain to think, just to see if this stuff would fly back in the day. We'll talk about probably the most recent controversial thing, but how Vancouver handled Bruce Boudreau's firing. Like, how would that go in the dressing room? Like, obviously the guys are not playing the way they want to, so the locker room's probably not the happiest place to be right now. But you almost have to feel for this guy. Like, he turned the team around 13, 14 months ago, and then nothing's working now. And it's pretty much like, I think, at the beginning of the season, I was kind of like, what the hell are they doing? But, it kind of seems clear to me now that it seemed like a Jimmy Rutherford problem more than a Bruce Boudreau problem. Like, what do you think that locker room atmosphere was like throughout this whole ordeal?
I don't know, if the coach loses the room, it's time for a coach to go. I think there's a responsibility to handle these things properly, and try to preserve as much dignity as you can. He's obviously, one of the most beloved coaches of modern day, and well respected on every level. He's a player's coach, and he commands a lot of respect, and he's spent a lot of time. So I think fundamentally that should be handled a certain way. So I don't know all of the intimate details of how this went down at the corporate level, but it certainly seems to me like it could have been handled differently.
So I mean, we mentioned earlier you had 3 coaches throughout one season in Atlanta. Was there at any point like writing on the wall, like, this guy's leaving, this guy's leaving? Because it seemed like for the last 2 weeks, we knew Bruce was going to get fired. He knew he was going to get fired. Like, was there ever writing on the wall like that whenever you were playing? And if so, did it drag on for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, you knew. I mean, sadly, a lot of times the coaches are the fall guy. It's not, especially coaches that have had great success. At different times, it's not necessarily the coach. It's sometimes the players need a fresh approach and a different mindset, and maybe a new voice. So I think it's more about stagnation than anything. I think the writing's always on the wall, and as players when shit's going to go down. I mean, you have a pretty good sense of it.
I mean, it's definitely tough to see, especially with how the city seemed to love him, the team seemed to love him, and how emotional he was the last little bit. But I mean, I couldn't imagine, like you said, the coach is almost the fall guy, and he's probably easiest fix, right? I mean, it's easier to fire one guy or the coaching staff than it is to trade and move contracts and everybody that has no moves now or limited moves or so it sucks that they're the fall guy.
Yeah.
But
usually how it goes,
it's unfortunately, yeah. I mean, another thing, I'm not sure if you've seen it today at all on any of the socials, but Johnny Gaudreau's first game back in Calgary, anytime he was touching the puck at practice, his teammates booed. Like, do you think everybody that leaves after a tenure like that should be booed?
I mean, I don't know why. I think the fan personally, like I can say this now that I don't play. I think the fans need to lighten up. You know, they need to understand that this is somebody's business. This is somebody's life and somebody's business, and they have a family, and they're trying to get whatever they can get out of the experience, whatever that is. You know, and do we owe anything to the city necessarily? Well, yeah. Well, we play there, and while we're on the team, we do. But we also have the right as athletes to go other places. And especially when we've earned that right and we get a chance to go somewhere else, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of not very classy because like you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth and like you love the guy one day and now he's for another team and you're going to boo him. I mean, why not appreciate him and give him a standing ovation and wish him the best of luck? I mean, it's kind of a cliche move, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere that you returned to play after leaving that you got booed?
I got booed in Pittsburgh for a while after all that stuff with Leopold,
after that clean hit. Yeah.
It didn't last too long. You know, I only actually got traded during the season once, I believe. I think I got traded at the deadline to Ottawa, and the Islanders didn't make the playoffs, and we didn't play against them as far as I know. And I never got booed when I went back to Atlanta. And I probably would have stayed in Atlanta. They didn't offer me a contract at the end of that season. So, it's I don't know. I think that the fans and the media need to just take a deep breath and realize this is entertainment in the end. And we're entertainers and athletes as much as we're a commodity to a city and to a team. We're individuals with our own set of needs. And so sometimes you want a new opportunity, or maybe you've earned a new opportunity, and people just need to chill out, and maybe maybe have some reverence and respect and appreciation for the time that you did spend there.
Like you said, like at the end of the day, like you guys are human, you get off the ice, you take your skates off, and, you guys go home to your families like anybody else would after a day job, like it's just the fact, like you said, like, people like burning jerseys. It's like everyone's just got to just chill out, like I understand you love for the game and your team, but.
Well, and guys, honestly, like playing for some teams, you're especially if you choose it, you're choosing to go play in a fishbowl. I mean, you can't go anywhere. Your wife can't go to the grocery store. It's what's it like for your kids at school? Like, are they getting fair treatment? I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's not all it's cracked up to be. So don't assume that like, just because you play for a city and they pay you a lot of money, that it's like a perfect situation for you. It's like, so sometimes you want to just go down to Columbus, Ohio and have a great career and, make the same money and maybe be the go-to guy in a city where you go out for dinner and you don't get swarmed,
Well, Jarmo Kekalainen appreciates what you just said.
Yeah.
They're probably going to use that for their next recruiting videos in the off season. But I'm glad you brought up burning jerseys, because the other night, and I still having a hard time wrapping my head around this. One of the Tampa Bay Lightning fans threw a Kucherov jersey on the ice. They won back-to-back cups like 2 years ago.
It's not like,
and they're still in a playoff position. It's not like they're heading towards a rebuild. Like, they're having a mediocre year. But it's like, to me, that's really give your head a shake. Like, what are you doing?
That's not a fan anymore. That's just I don't even know.
I don't know. There's always right wingers and there's a lot of people that are relatively uneducated on what it is, and then there's people that there's a lot of people that just look for a reason to be angry. So I mean, let's chalk it up to what it is,
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. Like, I mean, I can't remember that happening before. Like
it's really only like the last, like, I don't know, let's say how, I don't know, like 5-6 years where I've seen people throw jerseys on before. Like that never happened. I don't know if there was a change or something.
No, it happened. I can remember in the early '80s, and I'm dating myself now. But I was fortunate. My dad worked hard. He was a locksmith, but he was able to afford half season tickets for the Leafs, and we had gold seats, and probably in large part the reason why I had such a love and lust for pro hockey and the hope and the dream of making it. But I remember when Toronto played Calgary, and the Leafs lost 13-1 that game, and fans had tied their jerseys in knots. They were throwing them on the ice. The game pucks would come over, and they'd throw the game pucks back on the ice. I mean, I felt so embarrassed for those players because but people don't understand, the player, we're trying as hard as we can, and sometimes the shit just doesn't go well, or maybe the management hasn't assembled the right team or whatever. But to disrespect the players like that, and the city and the game is something that the fans should take on. I think personally, I mean, you're not bigger than that. You don't have the right. You don't have the right to do that. And especially when it comes to hurdling things on the ice that could hurt people or affect the course of the game. I mean, it's very self-centered.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine dropping a couple $100 on a jersey and then and throwing it on the ice. That baffles me. If you're in that financial situation with the price of everything nowadays, good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, more money than sense. I think they.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, you want to head into our yay or nay?
Yeah, our final.
So, Andy, this is a new segment that we started last week, and Adam has a pair of questions. I haven't seen them. And he's just going to ask us pretty much a thumbs up or thumbs down to these 3 hockey questions.
You got it.
Right.
Fire away.
So, number 1, does fighting still have a place in the league as of right now?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I won't give you a long-winded because it's yay or nay, so I guess it's just a yay.
Yeah.
So he's saying yes. I say yes as well. I mean, I think the staged hockey is probably, or sorry, the staged fighting is probably done in hockey, but I like a good spirited battle. I mean, if you're seeing the Pens versus Philly or Toronto Montreal or Calgary Edmonton, I like seeing the scrums and some guys that aren't normally fighting drop the gloves out of the heat of the moment. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Number 2, should the shootout be taken away as like after 3-on-3 it goes to the shootout? Do you think they should take that away and just play 3-on-3 for 10 minutes? Because the 3-on-3 never lasts long if it does go to the shootout. But do you think that the shootout should be taken away?
I would prefer the 3-on-3 to settle it, and if it didn't settle it 3-on-3, I think it should be a tie.
Bring the tie back.
Yeah,
I hate ties. I'd rather just continuous 3-on-3. It's so exciting to watch, especially with how well everybody skates nowadays and the speed and the hand-eye. I like you said, it rarely gets to a shootout now with how much time and space there is, but I think just continuous 3-on-3. The tie's like kissing your sister, and nobody wants to do that.
That's fair. All right, and the last one, it was kind of hard to word it, but so there's sometimes you see a play where someone gets cross-checked and the guy falls and the ref calls both penalties. He calls an embellishment and he calls the original penalty. If there's an embellishment penalty, do you think the original call should still stand?
It's a great fucking question.
Because if he's calling the embellishment, that means you're faking the cross-check. So I guess
you can't have
it's still a cross check, but you're embellishing it to try to get a call, which is making a mockery of the game. So I think the guy that embellishes should get 2 and 10, and the other guy that cross checks should get 2 minutes. Right, I think that levels the playing field. So if you're going to risk it and try to embellish something, you get caught, you should get the extra 10 and put your team at jeopardy.
I'm going to say yay to what Andy said. And you know what? Soccer, take some notes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Take some notes. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
All right. I want to ask you one non-hockey related question, Andy. What 2 teams are you picking in the Super Bowl, and who's your winner?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, it's gonna be tough to discount Cincy after what happened yesterday. and I don't know what's going to happen with our boy Mahomes. Whether or not he's going to be able to rebound back. That looked like a pretty gruesome ankle injury, but
Yeah.
I think the winner is going to come out of one of those two teams, in my opinion.
That's not what I like to hear as a Niners fan.
Yeah.
Okay,
I didn't even notice you're wearing a Niners.
Of course, I'm
hat
wearing
right
my
now.
Niners hat. I got to wrap them.
I just can't go there. I'm anti California right now, and definitely anti San Francisco. So
That's all right. I still like you, Andy. It's okay.
All right. Well, I'm gonna pick Cincy as well.
That's all
Sorry,
right.
and
It's all right.
I wonder who are you picking?
Yeah, I'm obviously picking the Niners.
Well, Andy, thanks for coming on. I had a blast.
Yeah.
We'll let you get to bed now. And hopefully we have you on again in the future. We'll definitely hit you up to see if we can get something going with Ribeiro, and
Yeah.
good luck with everything. We'll definitely be customers.
Yeah, sounds good, boys. Appreciate getting to know you guys too. Good luck with the show. Let me know if we can do anything together.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks,
Take
Andy.
care.
Have a good one.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Ciao.
Both guys, 5 minutes each for fighting.
Yeah, when we would say Joel, we would play, let's just say we're in the playoffs, we played Jonquière, and then because we were brawling, we obviously wouldn't get suspended, right? So we could brawl, especially with Mike Laurando. In the playoffs, we had Mike, so I had played for Mike back in Verdun. So if we would kind of brawl, and then we got to know, especially if we so you had Joel Theriault for Jonquière, right?
Yeah.
And he had come back, even though I think he had a cast on, but he was still playing. So even though he's got a cast, the fact that he's not allowed to fight, he's still, he's my buddy, but it's still one of my good friends. But I knew he was a loose cannon, so we had to set stuff up, right? So we had Rabbi. Rabbi was going to get him. I think it was Terry Bartlett ended up getting him. If I'm thinking of that brawl, but anyway, so we'd have to set up fighters, and then LP Charbonneau, I think, grabbed Mike Verano, Michel Verano, and then I fought. Who'd I fight? I fought Danik Lassard, which was another one of my buddies. We had enough guys that we could do that, right? We had to make sure we didn't lose a fight. So make sure you got to time the guys, set up certain tough guy with certain tough guy, and then make sure you don't look bad, especially at home. And then you have 5 guys left that can go clean house with whoever's left on the ice. So that was the fun part, being that equipped, having that many tough guys was an advantage, I guess, especially in that league where there weren't very many rules.
Well, I remember the same 2 refs all the time. The same 2 guys.
Yeah, that was. And then we played in the finals and we just brawled every game. And I said 6 out of 4 games because we swept that series. I'll remind my friends, my Larry and those guys that might be listening to this eventually, that we swept them in 4 straight. And we brawled, I think, 2 warm-ups for sure, Corey. I'd say 2, maybe 3 warm-ups. We brawled.
Yeah, I remember being down at ice for a couple pregame brawls. Refs weren't even out on the ice, and
then we'd brawl again during the game, and then everybody just be able to play again. That's the part that was fun, because nowadays you do well. You don't want that, obviously, in hockey, but you fight now. You might be suspended just for fighting, like, straight up.
Yeah.
Depending on what you did, what you said to the ref, and what you. C'est ça. C'est pas la même affaire. Ça a changé pas mal.
The game 7 against Jonquière, that ball in warm up was set up. Like,
was it?
Anyway,
it was set up.
So how much was set up? Like, what are we talking about?
So the only thing was our backup goalie Strome.
Yeah,
was going to take Lior Strome was going to take at some point at the red line, and like someone had hit him. And the only thing that was discussed that I heard in the dressing room, because I wasn't part of what had to happen, was Laurando had come in and said, Rabbi, Desarmo, tie up Joel.
Yeah.
Until one of you has got him tied up that he can't get loose. Because if he gets loose, he's going to rain terror on everybody. Let him have a stick.
So is this a conversation you guys have had with the other team?
No.
So you guys are just like, we're going to fucking start something and let's see how it goes.
Because Mike, this is the way, like, even before, without brawling, a lot of times we would set up fights. It wasn't fixed, but we would say who's going with who, same type of thing. Because I remember when we played in Verdun, Mike would come in and we say, okay, we're going to start tough. We're going to give a show. So you're going to go. We'd ask each other who's going with who. So we'd try and do a good matchup to make sure, especially if we're playing.
So, like,
home,
let's say you said Joel Theriault comes up to you and you're not supposed to fight him. You say, no, sorry. Like,
well, yeah, because we would line up. We would, especially if you're at home, you got last change.
Yeah.
So you'd line up who you want against who at the red line. And then you go from there. But yeah, I remember, Mike, what Corey was saying is like, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Make sure Terrio doesn't get loose, and then make sure you just, let's make it happen.
Wow.
Yeah, those were the good days.
I don't think you see that anymore. Even like just keeping track. Like there's no team in Cornwall anymore. I mean, there's the Prowlers, but that's not even close to the same type of hockey.
Yeah.
But you don't see that anymore. Even looking at some of the LNAH like stats, like
no, it doesn't happen much.
It's cleaned up quite a bit. Which I mean, if I'm going to Saturday night local hockey, I want to see a few fights. I want to see, and I know it's not really part of the game anymore, but I want to see it.
We fought so much, Joe. We fought so many times. I mean, you knew everybody, like, you knew every fighter, you knew how they fought. So if you were going to match up and you wanted to make sure this guy's fighting this guy and that, you knew exactly, like, we fought so much. I fought Mike Bro one year. I think we fought 13 times the one year, just that one guy, right? So, I mean, you got to know guys and how they fought. And so if you want to plan a brawl, you can set up things. Obviously anything happens in a fight, but you could figure out what was, you could try and plan it anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have loved this league anymore until these conversations. Like, man, I am just jonesing. Like, man, I'd love to go see a Comets game right now. Like